Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings Benny's Bats edition for Memorial Day, Monday, May 30th. We're going to talk about the small 5-game slate that we have this evening. With it being Memorial Day, there are a lot of games starting in the afternoon, and there's a lot of information over on the website if you're looking for the early games. But we're going to talk about the late games here. This way you guys have some time to watch the video and, kind of digest this information before you put in your lineups later on today. We have 5 games. The first one we're going to talk about is going to be Washington going up against Philadelphia. Tanner Roark is on the mound for Washington. He's a guy that left-handed bats have a higher average against, and he does have a high fly ball rate, which in Philly is probably not a good thing for him. Let's see. Some of the guys that I'm looking at here, Odubel Herrera on top of that order. This year alone, he has a 409 WOBA and a 157 ISO against right-handed pitching. He's somebody that's been getting on base quite a bit. He can steal a base for you, score a couple runs. Definitely still reasonably priced. I think he's like 3,800. So somebody that I'd be looking at. Another guy who's kind of cheap, has good position eligibility, and has been hitting in the 3-hole lately has been Andres Blanco. If we keep seeing Blanco up there towards the top of the order, I think he's somebody else you can look at. This year and last year, he's had one of the better WOBA ISO combinations on the team against right-handed pitching. He doesn't have a ton of at-bats. He's not an everyday player, but he is somebody who hits well enough that he could be in there every day. And lately, he has been playing more at second base with, Cesar Hernandez kind of struggling. And then if you want to look for some bats with a little bit of power, Tommy Joseph has kind of been stealing some at-bats from Ryan Howard lately, even in righty-on-righty matchups. So I don't know if we're going to see Howard here today, but whether it's Howard or Joseph, I think I kind of like Joseph a little more. Even in a righty-on-righty matchup, I just think I have a little more faith in him. Ryan Howard's on the downside of his career at this point, and I wouldn't be looking to, throw him out there unless I was stacking up Phillies today. You can also look at Maikel Franco, very good hitter, good in righty-on-righty matchups, third baseman for Philadelphia here. He's probably another guy that has a little bit of power, and against a fly ball pitcher in a good hitter's ballpark like Philly, I think he could be another sneaky option we can look at against Roark. Like I said, I like a lot of these bats. I don't know if I'm going to stack them up, though, because Philly's not a team that usually pounds out 6, 7, 8 runs, which is really what you would need from a stack in order to have them pay off. I think I might use a couple of these guys, kind of sprinkle them in here and there. I'm not really looking at Roark much today, although I know people are on him. On the other side of this game, we got Jeremy Hellickson. He's been great so far this year, pretty even to both right and left-handed bats, about a, 250 average, decent ground out fly ball ratio. I think the left-handed bats is probably the way I try to attack them. So a guy like Bryce Harper, over a 400 WOBA this year, over a 300 ISO this year, 3 for 6 lifetime already against Hellickson. So he is somebody who not only profiles well, but has hit him well in the past. Also like Daniel Murphy. Daniel Murphy this year has a 447 WOBA, which is huge. 240 ISO, which is nice. And we talk about all the time how with teams pitching around Harper and not trying to, let Harper beat them, Murphy's getting up every single time with men on base. And as long as he's getting up with men on base, he has a chance to keep hitting the ball. He's hitting like 380 right now. And he has a chance to knock in runs, which makes him a very viable option, especially at a tough-to-fill second base position. You get a guy batting cleanup that plays second base, good RBI potential, good run-scoring potential, can get you multiple hits. I think that's a solid option that you can look at here. Next game, we're going to talk about New York Yankees against the Toronto Blue Jays. Ivan Nova for the Yankees is on the mound, and this is a guy who – for the first time last game threw 100 pitches. He wasn't there to start the season. They're kind of bringing him along slow. He's pitching like 4, 5, 6 innings. But again, with this Yankee bullpen, if he can get to the 6th inning, then you're bringing in Betances and Miller and Aroldis Chapman. And, that's still a pretty solid start. So if he can get you 6 innings here, which is about the max I think he's going to give you. I don't see him going past 6. But he's been solid. I mean, he gave up 4 runs in his last start, but the 3 starts before that, he only gave up 1. I think he's only given up more than 1 run on 2 or 3 outings so far this year. He's been very, very good. But again, he's not going to go deep in the game. So if you're looking for a big score out of him, you're probably not going to get it. You're probably going to get 6 innings, maybe 5 strikeouts. Hopefully he can limit the other team to, 6 or 7 walks and hits and 1 or 2 runs. If he does that, he's going to give you a solid, mid to high teen score. If he can add the win, he might get to 20. And make it 3x value for you. But again, there's some good bats in this Toronto team, and it looks like they're starting to wake up a little bit. Left-handed bats are usually the way you want to go against Nova, but some of these righties actually have hit him pretty well in the past. Joey Batista has 389 WOBA, 292 ISO since the start of 2015. 9 of 27 against Nova with a home run. Donaldson's a 382, 258 since the start of last season, 8 of 20 against Nova. Then Edwin Encarnacion, 376 Woba, 268 ISO, 11 of 32 with a home run against Nova in his career. So the game is in Toronto, good hitters ballpark. Like I said, the lefties usually do better. So if guys like Smoke and Saunders are in there towards the top of the lineup, they're going to be worth a look as well. It's not the easiest spot here for Nova. So I do think I like some of these Toronto bats. Nova's been quality, though, so I don't know if I really want to stack them up against them, but I could see it as a viable option for a tournament. On the other side of this game, we got Marcus Stroman, and I was just looking at what the Yankees have done against Stroman. He's pretty much owned them. Gardner, 3 for 17 lifetime. Ellsbury, 0 for 14. Tex, 2 for 9. McCann, 3 for 16. Beltran, 2 for 11. You take the 5 biggest bats up there towards the top of the Yankee order, and they're 10 of 67 lifetime against Stroman. I didn't look at A-Rod's numbers. I forgot that he's back right now, but he's somebody you can look at. But even if you throw in a guy like Starlin Castro, who's another one of their big bats, he's 0 for 3 lifetime. So now you're talking 10 of 70, not including A-Rod's stats. Like I said, he may hit him well, he may not. I don't know. But Stroman's pretty tough. I mean, he's only given up about a 200 batting average to both right and left-handed bats. I really just don't see this as a good spot for any of the Yankee bats here. If anything, I think I'm more on Stroman today than I would be on anybody on the Yankee side. Next game we can look at, we got Pittsburgh against Miami. Jeff Locke on the mound for Pittsburgh. Lefty, right-handed bats have a higher average against him. He does have a low fly ball rate, though, so he does keep the ball in the grounds. I don't expect to see a lot of home runs. 2 guys that stand out. One guy who really stands out to me is Marcell Ozuna. His numbers are as good, if not better, against left-handed pitching than Giancarlo Stanton's are. Stanton's probably not going to play in this game. He's been out for like the last week or so. But Ozuna's picking up the slack, and it doesn't look like there's any difference between the two of them at this point. 454 Woba, 262 ISO score since the start of last season. And like I said, with Giancarlo out, Ozuna's come in there and just been every bit as good against left-handed pitching. So it's not even like they're missing Stanton all that much the way Ozuna's been playing. He's got like a 36-game streak of getting on base. I think he's got like a 10 or 11-game hit streak going. He's pounding out RBIs. He's hitting in a cleanup spot. Really, really like Marcell Ozuna this year. Edgar Prado, another guy you can look at. He doesn't have a ton of upside, but he is a solid cash game option. Hits in the 2-hole in that order in front of some big bats, and he does really well against left-handed pitching. So I could see him racking up 2 hits or so, maybe getting a walk, scoring a run or 2. He doesn't really have home run upside. He doesn't really steal bases, so he's not somebody I'm expecting a huge score out of. I'd rather probably use him as a cheaper salary-saving option in cash games than I would try to put him into a tournament roster. I just don't see him in tournaments. Other than Ozuna, I don't think there's any tournament rosters or tournament plays on this Marlins roster. On the other side of this game, we got Adam Conley, who he's been up and down this year. Right-handed bats are the way we want to attack him, but left-handed bats have been okay against him too. The 2 guys that really stand out to me, Andrew McCutchen, I really like. 380 Woba, 199 ISO, hits left-handed pitching very well. Will be probably in the 2-hole in that order again. So he's definitely somebody I think we can look at. Francisco Cervelli as a catcher is one of the better catcher options today. He hits lefties really well. 370 Woba, 120 ISO for him. Again, not a ton of upside, but for a cheap catching option, he does hit left-handed pitching extremely well. So I think he makes some sense to take a look at there. You can also look at guys like Starlin Marte. He hits lefties pretty well. Young Ho Kong, he's another guy that you can look at. David Freese, even, who bats up in the 3-hole. Some people are going to try to talk you into Jordy Mercer. I'm off the Jordy Mercer train after the other day. This guy's never really been great, but he has hit well against left-handed pitching. I've now used him twice at the top of the order against left-handed pitching, and he hasn't produced anything. So even with the cheap price, I'm probably not using Jordy Mercer today, but I understand why people would be talking about him. He does normally hit left-handed pitching pretty well, although so far this year, it really hasn't paid off when he's been given the opportunity to do so. Next game we can talk about Tampa Bay against Kansas City. Some pretty good pitching in this game. Ian Kennedy on the mound, giving up about a 250 batting average to both right and left-handed bats, but he does have a high fly ball rate. He is a guy that can get tagged for home runs. Corey Dickerson kind of stands out to me. You got a left-handed bat, hits 375 Woba, 290 ISO against right-handed pitching, and he does have power against the righty. So he's the kind of guy that I don't mind for a tournament, because if he gets a hold of one, he finishes a lot of times with the stat line of like 1 for 4 with a home run, or maybe like 1 for 4 with an RBI double or something like that. Probably strike out once, or have one really bad at bat that you're like, God, why did I even roster this guy if you're watching it? But he does have a little bit of upside. So definitely not for cash, but for a tournament, I can see it. And then, like I said, I mean, Kennedy's not exactly dominant to righties or lefties. They both hit him pretty well. So you could look at some of these right-handed guys that have a little bit of pop, maybe like a Longoria, Steven Sosa, Pierce, Brandon Guyer. I wouldn't stack them up, but I do think maybe one of these guys does get a hold of one of them against Kennedy, who's a fly ball pitcher, and, take some yard. So if you pick out the right guy on this team that does take Kennedy yard, I mean, I do think Kennedy is a guy that can give up home runs, and all these guys here do have some home run power. They're all better against left-handed pitching, so it's not the ideal matchup. But again, Kennedy's not lights out to right-handed bats, so I think at least one of them could get it. Which one, I don't really know. But if like Sosa's leading off, maybe that would be something to look at. Longoria almost hit another home run yesterday, hit one right to the warning track, so he's been seeing the ball pretty well. Like I said, I'm not going to stack them up. I'm not going to use 3 or 4 of these guys, but I definitely think you can put one of them in there and have some upside with it. On the other side of this game, we got the rookie, Matt Andriese, on the mound, and he's been awesome. 2.63 ERA for him, 0.92 whip. He's not a high strikeout guy, only 17 strikeouts in 27 innings so far. The left-handed bat is how I'd want to go after him. And I say left-handed bat because Eric Hosmer is really the only one that's left there. 393 WOBA, 201 ISO for him since the start of last season. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather today. But yeah, like I was saying, with Hosmer, 393 WOBA, 201 ISO. Only left-handed bat they really have left. Gordon and Moustakas, crashed into each other last week. Both guys are a little banged up. Moustakas is out for the year. I think Gordon's on a 15-day DL. So, like I said, the left-handed bats in that lineup are dwindling. They do have Morales, but he has not been hitting well lately. There are a couple other guys I'd look at, though. You got a guy like Whitfield, who's been hitting in the 2 spot in that order. He's been pretty good. He's been getting on base, scoring some runs, still pretty cheap. Lorenzo Cain had a couple big hits the other day. He's always a bat that you can look at. So I think that, this KC team is a weaker lineup than it was last year. You look at some of the names at the bottom, guys like Cuthbert and, Orlando and Dyson, not as great a lineup as they had last year, but I still think they're pretty solid up towards the top, Hosmer being my favorite bat overall. Then the last game on the day is Detroit going up against the Los Angeles Angels. We got Justin Verlander on the mound, and Verlander's actually looked the best he's looked in like the last 3 seasons. A little bit of a reverse splits guy, so right-handed bats actually hit him better. At least over the last 3 years, they've had a higher average against them. Mike Trout is a guy who stands out just based on the numbers. 414 WOBA, 287 ISO. He's only 1 of 9 lifetime against Verlander, though. I would have thought that he would do better against Verlander, being a guy who hits righties well, and Verlander struggling with righties. But so far, he hasn't had much success against them. I guess you can look at a guy like Pujols for a little bit of upside, but you look at the WOBA and ISO numbers for this team and all the underlying batting stats. Nothing on the Angels really excites me outside of Mike Trout. And I do like Verlander. I mean, he's been a pretty solid, pretty good pitcher. I think a lot of people are going to have exposure to him tonight. I don't think this Angels team doesn't strike out a ton, but they're also not a team that's putting up a ton of runs. So I do think it's a pretty decent spot here for Verlander. The other side of this game, we got Jhoulys Chacin, who I would be willing to pick on. Left-handed bats normally the way you want to go, but remember, there's really not a lot of left-handed bats on this Tigers team. So we looked at right-handed bats, and right-handed bats do okay against him too. He does have a slightly elevated fly ball rate against them. It's not a huge fly ball rate, but it is a little bit higher than league average, and they do have a decent batting average against them. Again, you also have to take some of his numbers with a grain of salt because he did pitch in Coors Field as his home park for a long time. So you look back to some of those numbers, they may seem a little inflated, but remember, anybody who pitches in Coors Field for their home games, at least half their starts on the season, is going to have some inflated stats there. 2 guys that really stand out, really like Miguel Cabrera, 414 WOBA, 218 ISO. He had a monster week last week, a whole bunch of home runs. He's starting to hit the ball really well and really be a factor. So I think Miggy's somebody we can look at. Also like J.D. Martinez, especially like the fact that they have him in the 2-hole in the order right now. It gives them an extra at bat a lot of times and, makes them dangerous, especially in a game like this where they're on the road and they're guaranteed 27 outs in the full 9 innings. 365 WOBA, 245 ISO for JD. So he's another guy I'd look at. There's a lot of bats here that have some pop that can hit right-handed pitching well. Upton's not bad. Kinsler's not bad. Castellanos has been having a really good season. But then if you're looking for a punt catcher, you could always look at Jared Saltalamacchia, left-handed bat that has some home run pop against right-handed pitching. Again, I'm not a big fan of Chastain. I definitely think he's somebody we can pick on today. So, I do think that a lot of these Detroit bats make some sense. And like I said, it was only a small 5-game slate. So that wraps it up today for our DraftKings Benny's Bats edition. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com, and enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. And as always, stay classy, DFS.